Well, greetings and salutations, test takers. This is Dean Tinney, aka Series 7 Guru. We offer a free weekly, well, I shouldn't say it's weekly, a free office hour. It's subject to change. It's mainly for paid students, but sometimes if I get a email from like Nicole, I'll grant a scholarship. It's a good deal because if you're like Nicole and you show up on your own, it ends up being a tutoring session, which is usually $225 an hour. So a great value. You can find it in the deantinneytutoring.setmore.com under classes. There's two free things. The YouTube channel is completely free. There's nothing that costs anything on the YouTube channel. No investment on your part. But on the tutoring page, there are two free things, the office hours, as well as the live stream that we're doing later tonight. All right, so I asked what you like to talk about. Usually it's more than one person. We just go through whatever it is. Looks like today what Nicole would like to talk about is a spread. I call this Don't Hate the Eight. There are eight test questions about a spread. And the first one is, can you identify it? You know, if you can't identify it, even that wasn't a test question, I'm telling you it is. But even if it wasn't, it is. If you can't identify, you're just going to be stuck. You're just going to be looking at the screen going, I don't know what it is. A spread is when you're long and short the same type of contract. And what we're spreading is the difference in the premiums. That is what we're spreading. So once we've identified it as a spread, the next thing we have to do is determine debit or credit. Now, if we get this right, we can rock and roll. And the way we determine that is we net the premiums. So is that 3, Nicole? Is that money out or is that money in?
Hold on 1 second.
What's that? Money out or money in when you buy an option contract?
That would be money in.
Well, it's actually money.
Or that would be money out when you're
there
buying.
You go. Money.
Sorry.
No worries.
I'm nervous.
Nothing to be so nervous about at all. Nothing to be nervous about. So here, when we do that, that's going to be money out. And so we're going to put that there. We're netting the premiums that we're doing. How about when you sell a call? Money out or money in?
Money in.
That's right. So that's our first thing. Our first thing is to get this lined up. And so let's put that there. And that's money in. Now, again, I always tell people our time together is a buffet. You know, take what you like, leave what you don't, you know. But I believe you should stay menu driven. And one thing I would hope you can get at some point with practice is pretty good at test specifications and tracking money. And so what I like to do is just remind myself what I'm looking at here. What we're looking at is an obligation to sell Apple at 140. That's an obligation to sell the stock at the strike price. And I got to tell you something. This is a pretty smart person here because, you know, if the person just did this, if the person, this investor, just did that, they would have unlimited risk. That is really a dumb bear. Oh, man, that's a dumb bear because that's a naked call. That is unlimited risk. You're agreeing to sell Apple you don't own. And so I say, Nicole, why don't we take part of your 11 points and put in a ceiling? Let's take part of your money and let's go buy that 155 call just in case. And so now you are a smart bear because now you have a choice to buy the stock at the strike price. Again, what Dean thinks isn't on the test. You know, what I like to think about is options being about floors and ceilings. You know, I think this is a floor here at 140. And this is a ceiling at 155. And basically what we're saying is we want to play between 140, 155, and then we don't want to play no more. Now, so far, you're just listening to me ramble because I haven't told you any test questions yet, except identify the spread. So that is what you had to do, is identify the spread. But there's 8 things we got to do. Now, this next piece we're going to do together is really important because if we get this next piece right, we can rock and roll. We can rock and roll. If we can determine that this is a credit spread, we got more money in than out, we'll be able to say expire narrow, we'll know our max gain. If on the other hand, we determine this is a debit spread, we will know debit exercise widen, and we'll know a loss. So this is going to be our loss, which is really key. So how do we determine whether this is a debit or credit spread? Well, when we netted the premiums, we had, test point, more money in than out. And when we have more money in than out, that is a credit spread. Yeah, well, let's go big here. Boom. So this is an 8-point credit spread. Now, as I mentioned, once we get that, we can rock and we can roll. Once we get credit, we know credit, expire, narrow, and we will be right every time. Every time. You tell me credit. Now, once you get the menu done, then you can think about it. Don't think about it till you get the menu done, but credit expires. So if I'm your broker and I call you, I say, hey, Nicole, the contract's expired. Are you happy or are you sad? You're going to say, oh, Dean, that's wonderful, because that means I get to keep the money. I agreed to be a potential victim. Nobody victimizes me. Neener, neener, neener. I keep the money. So that's what you're going to be happy if this thing expires. Because if it expires, then you're going to make your maximum gain, which is the net credit. Whenever you collect money, the best case is you agree to be a potential victim. Nobody victimizes you. Now, I got to say, I would think you'd kind of be a jerk of a customer if you say to me, Dean, we should have done the naked calls at 11 and we would have made 11 points instead of 8. And I say, yeah, but you would have been taking all kinds of risk. And so this is a much better way to take the money without taking all the risk. So that's kind of a better way, smarter way to be a bear is to do it this way. And let's put that, boom. Narrow, you'll be right every time. Now, a good memory aid device is credit has 6 letters, expire has 6 letters, and narrow has 6 letters. So once you get credit, you can rock and roll. Once we get credit, we go, okay, we want contracts to expire. We want contracts to narrow. All right, so our next thing we got to be able to do, I call this don't hate the 8. There's 8 things you got to do. So far, we've identified it. That's one test item. We've determined it's a credit spread. That's a second testable question. We've determined we want the contracts to expire. Third testable question. We've determined narrow. We want the difference in the premiums to get smaller. Hardest part to get, don't need to get it. And we determined our max gain. So the next thing we got to do is we've got to determine our max loss. So, again, the whole point of a spread is I'm saying I want to play between these two numbers. So test taking trick, whatever the gain and the loss are, they have to equal the difference in the strikes. Whatever the gain and the loss are, they have to equal the difference in the strikes. Now, if you don't get that, because if you don't get that, then you're going to have to memorize. Nothing wrong with memorizing. But I would tell you, once you go down the memory road, the amount of stuff you're going to have to memorize, it can continue to compound. Whereas if you just know certain things, life would be easier. And so as a test taker, if I ask you max gain, max loss, Nicole, you could shop the answer at this point and say, okay, whatever the two numbers are they're offering me have to add up to the difference in the strikes. So it's got to be 8 plus something that equals 15. The gain and the loss always equals the difference in the strikes. So what is that number? 7. Now, if you don't get that, then you have to memorize the maximum loss in a credit spread is the difference in the strikes less the net debit. I just think that's a mental mess. I think it's easier to know the gain and loss equals the difference in the strikes. It'd be bad form as a test taker to give me as an answer anything that doesn't add up to that. So here we had a net credit of 8. There's our 8 that we just said is our gain. Right? We said our gain, which is 8, equals the gain and loss equals the difference in the strikes, which in this case is 15. And so that's got to be 7. Now, after you get the menu done, then you can think about it. But don't think about it, Nicole, till you get the menu done. Right? So once you get the menu done, say, okay, well, worst case is I'm going to buy Apple at 155, which I have a choice to do. I'm going to deliver at 140, which I'm obliged to do. I'm going to lose 15 points. I've got 8 in my account. I lose 7. But don't think about that till you get the menu done. Don't start thinking about things until, you got all the testable items on your official scratch paper, right? All right, so the break even is somewhere between 140 and 155. Now, I didn't, Nicole, ask you, when we started this thing, where you are in basic options. But that's just a basic naked call, and that's really not smart. And if I asked you what the break even was on that, it'd be 151. Strike price plus premium. If you only remember one thing, call up. Strike price plus premium. But now, and this is a common thing, this is not a basic option. This is an advanced option strategy. And we do have a memory aid device to help us with how we're going to figure out the break even. Now, before I show you that, the break even has got to be somewhere within this range. All the action takes place between the strikes. So that means as a test taker, you could eliminate any choices offered to you. If that's choice A, you say, well, it can't be that. It's got to be some number between 140 and 155, and it can't be this. That alone gives you a 50-50 because there's only going to be 2 things offered to you that are between the strikes. Now, our mnemonic device, to remember, memory aid device, is CAL. And what that stands for is call, add to the lower. So the way we're going to get the break even is we're going to take the lower strike, and let's just fill this out. Call, add to the lower. So we're going to take the lower strike. We're going to add the net premium, and we'll have our break even. So our lower strike is 140. So we're going to take 140 plus not 11 because we don't have 11 anymore, right? We don't have 11. Well, all we have is 8. We get our break even of 148. So the way we did that is we took the lower strike and we added the net premium. Doesn't matter, by the way, whether that is a debit or credit, doesn't matter, whatever that net number is. So let me just put that here. Let's label this lower strike. Plus net premium. Okay, the last thing we got to do is determine whether this is bullish or bearish. And so how do we determine whether you're a bull or bear? Do you want Apple to go up or do you want Apple to go down? Do you want Apple to go up or do you want Apple to go down? The way we do that is the larger premium dominates the position. So when we're trying to find out what sandbox you're playing in, is the one with the larger premium. So the sandbox we're playing in here is the short call. And short calls are bearish. This is, by the way, this is a smart bear. You know, one of my big things I'm always saying is don't be a dumb bear. Be a smart bear. Don't be a dumb bear. Right. And here is a dumb bear. Here's a dumb bear. Somebody who does a naked call. All right, so let's go all the way back. Boom, 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 boom. And I said, Nicole, what would you like to talk about in today's office hour? You said, Dean, I'd like to go over spreads, advanced option strategies. You didn't quite say it that way, but you know, that's kind of what's going on, right? I said, fine, let's go look at a spread. So let's just review our test questions about spreads. There's 8 test questions about a spread. I call it don't hate the 8. Don't hate the 8. And so, boom, can you identify the spread? It's called a spread because what the spread is the difference in the premiums. So a spread is when you're long and short the same type of contract. You know, what we're hoping is that, you know, options sound less and less of a foreign language rather than more and more of a foreign language. They say when you dream the foreign language, that's when you know it. So I guess when you have your first Series 7 dream, you go, woo, you know, I've learned this foreign language. So this is a spread. That's our test question number 1. Test question number 2. Can we determine whether it is a credit or a debit spread? If we get this right, we can rock and roll. Because if we get debit, exercise, widen goes together like Mountain Dew, Nike, just do it. Or when you're wide like Dean, you need to exercise. And we know our loss. If we get credit, we know credit, expire, narrow. And we know our gain. So the way to remember credit is credit has 6 letters, expire has 6 letters, narrow has 6 letters. So the way we determine credit or debit is we net the premiums. So we're going to net those premiums, and we find out when we net those premiums that we are looking at a credit spread. Once we get that, we can rock and roll. Because we get credit, we say expire, we say narrow, and we got our gain. We'll be right every time. The hardest part to get is this idea of the premiums getting smaller, narrowing, or widening, or larger. But we don't need to get it because credit, expire, narrow goes together what? All the time. If I could close this out for a net of 6, I'd make 2. And net of 5, I'd make 3. Right? If I can close it out for less, I'm a winner. Okay, so our next thing we have to be able to do is determine the max loss. Now, the max loss and max gain always equals the difference in the strikes. That's the whole point of a spread. As I'm saying, I only want to play between 140, 155, and then I don't want to play no more. So you can either memorize that the maximum loss at a credit spread is the difference in the strikes less than that credit, which I think is a mental mess. Or you could say 8 plus something equals 15. 8 plus something equals 15, and that would be 7. And then again, as I said, don't think about it till you get the menu done. Because if you have these 8 things, whatever they want to know, you're going to have the answer to. But after you get the menu done, then you can think about it. You can say, okay, well, if I buy the stock at 155, which I have a choice to do, and I sell the stock at 140, which I'm obliged to do, I would lose 15 points. I got 8 in my account. I lose 7. The next thing we got to do is our break even. We have 2 great mnemonics for that, cow and push. Cow and push. If it's a call spread, we're going to use call, add to the lower. If it's a put spread, we're going to use put, subtract from the higher. And so we're going to use our memory aid device here called cow. Now, as a test taker, we said a test taking trick is that we know that the break even has to be somewhere between 140 and 155. So we can just shop our answer set, and we would know that it can't be something that's above 155 or below 140. So we're going to take our lower strike, 140. We're going to add our net premium and get our break even of 148. And then the last thing we have to be able to do in a spread is determine whether it is bullish or bearish. And recall how we determine bullish or bearish? The larger
The
premium
larger premium determines
dominates the
the
position, which is a short call.
Yeah.
So I don't know where you're at in your study efforts. So to jump into a spread right out of the gate, and if you haven't laid the base on the basic options, maybe that's a little bit of a too much of a jump for you. But on the channel, we have 3 class replays. We have basic options, the options playlist. We have stock plus options. And then we have advanced options where you can actually watch me do this, teach a class rather than an office hour. Now, Nicole's case, as I had mentioned, she sent me an email. And so just so you know, if you're out there listening to this and you don't have the resources for the $225 hour tutoring, there are 2 free things that you can book. You can book a overstream session. We're doing one tonight, 6:15 after our weekly live stream Q&A. And if you're a paid student, you can book this office hour. In this case, I offered to Nicole just as a scholarship because she sent me an email and sounded like she needed some help. So I thought, well, let's see if we can give her some help. All right. So remember, inch by inch, your Series 7 is a cinch, yard by yard, your Series 7 is hard. I'll see you office hour, tutoring class, whatever the case may be. And let me stop our recording here.